what we're going to do to start off with is we're actually bringing a guest into the show. A guest I haven't advertised either, not in the old cliff notes. Former Mayor of Dunedin, friend of the show, Aaron Hawkins joins us. G'day, Aaron.
Kia ora kōrua. Thanks for having me.
Was it like a casual look off screen and then look back, like a double take, or were you actually looking at something?
Yeah, I'm going to do a triple take later.
Okay, good. Very exciting. Now, Aaron, the reason we've got you on, as we've said to you, you guys know this, but the system's going to do some strange things in a minute, but you'll be able to watch what I'm putting up, but it'll be harder to speak to it, is actually before we go, because we're going to talk about local body politics, but we're going to relate it to a national theme, not national party, but a national politics theme that me and Chewie always talk about. The revitalisation of George Street, Aaron. Was that started before you came on board, or was that started in your term? What was the timeline for it to get to it opening in the weekend?
Yeah, how good, eh? I guess it depends on where you start the clock. So the George Street project is part of the Central City Plan, and the Central City Plan predates my involvement as an elected member. I remember sitting around tables with butcher's paper in the public art gallery auditorium as people talked about, what we wanted to see for the city centre, and I was just an interested citizen. The first stage of that was the warehouse precinct redevelopment, and then the George Street thing came next, and I think the budget for that got signed off in the long-term plan in 2018, which would have been my second term on council, but the substantive decisions around the design and most contentiously the layout and allocation of space on that street were made in the last couple of years.
Okay, so for people who don't know, and remember, we're talking about a Dunedin thing here, but there is a relationship to national politics, so stick with us. Is in the weekend, if you're going from the eastern part of Dunedin, or the northern part, I guess, over that side, and you're coming in towards the Octagon, it's down a road called George Street, and it goes all the way down and it ends at the Octagon, and then on the other side of it is Princess Street. We've got a section which is actually a really cool, funky section of George Street, and it's sort of where the mall is. We've got a big mall that comes off it, and there's a whole bunch of eateries in this area. And down the first part of it where this new redevelopment has started, the eateries it's wicked. You walk down and there's like just Asian food all down this side, and then there's Turkish food here and Japanese food here. It's really, really lovely area. And so what's happened is it's gone from a 2-lane street, inner city street, to a 1-lane inner city street, one way, but I know it hasn't been pedestrianised because that would imply no cars, but it's certainly been made more pedestrian friendly. And what you're looking at right now, if you're with us, is my photo that I took on Sunday to the sort of opening of it. So this bit down the middle here is where the cars drive. You can see they've still got car parks over there. Over there in the corner, there's still car parks and stuff there as well. And it was just stunning. It was just stunning down there at the moment. So that's the road down there, got blocked off. This bit through the middle here is the road. And it's one way, but it can get, like it was in the weekend, shut down for events, whatever's going on. There's a really good photo. So you can see there's a parked car there. That would be where the car parks normally are. So kind of 5, 10, 15-minute car parks on the side. And this bit down the middle is where, if you've been to Queenstown, in fact, I thought, guys, when I was in Queenstown a couple of weekends ago, there's the area around the wharf where you don't quite know whether you're allowed to drive there or not, because it's all kind of cobbled, and the cobble bit looks like the footpaths, and it sort of feels a bit the same like that now. So this is what's opened up in the weekend, guys. And, people were there celebrating. This is a local radio host down here in Dunedin, and this is Mayor Jules Radich in there as well. Down there cutting ribbons, shaking hands, taking lots of credit for all the good work that's gone. Here's some imagery of...
I'd like to thank the retailers who've shown extraordinary patience during this highly disruptive time. And I know, and I've heard, that it hasn't been easy.
So, the mayor, as you would expect for a big opening, the mayor kind of goes there. One of the small problems with this, though, as we're saying it, is old Jules Radich wasn't really a fan of this project. And this is going to relate back to what we talk about all the time, which is holding the incumbent government, local body, parliamentarian government, whatever, making sure we hold them accountable to the same level they held the previous guys accountable to. Now, this is me doing it. If you can see in the top hand corner, it says BHN Dunedin. So we did some Dunedin specials around the mayoralties. This is me asking Jules Radich about that inner city pedestrianisation, and this is what he told me about it before the last election. But talk to me about George Street and the pedestrianisation zone. Where do you sit on that?
I strenuously opposed the change.
Strenuously opposed. Just make sure we're clear on that. Not just opposed, but strenuously.
Of George Street to a one-way traffic situation, supposedly at 10 kilometres an hour. Is that what you mean?
How come? Yeah, and also, so that's what I'm talking about. The pedestrianisation, making it more pedestrian friendly, making it one way, slowing the speed for a sector, just a sector of George Street.
Yes. Well, it's all of the shopping centre. Yeah, so I disagree with that. And I think it is fundamentally wrong. And, if you're to look to the actual report we had from the independent consultant who reported on it.
Yep.
He's
So for those of you watching, this is me showing Jules Radich the kind of artist's impressions of what it could be. Again, cars drive down the middles, parking on one of the sides, much more pedestrian friendly.
Says that there is it exposes the possibility of financial failure. It makes the street much more dangerous after dark, and that is borne out by the crime situation at Cuba Street in Wellington and even Fort Street in Auckland. And the lack of access for shoppers will be a problem. And
that'll look, you pretty much got the sum total of his thoughts there. Not a fan of it, not really happy about it. There's more writings about it. Two of the naysayers were councillors and mayoral aspirants, Jules Radich and Lee Vandervis, and they voted against. Noting the report that updated the committee on development of the redesigns, Councilor Radich had been a critic of the planned shift to one-way traffic in George Street and what he has described as lack of sufficient attention to the priorities of shop proprietors and shoppers. The planned street layout was, quote, on the wrong side of history, end quote. Sheesh. And it would take the city back to the 1950s, he said. I think that's where I'm at for right now. So let me take this off so we can all talk again. I want to look at this, Chewy, when we talk a bigger picture about, we often talk about the National Party and what the National Party are doing and saying now and how they're holding themselves to a different standard to what they held the Labour government to. But it seems maybe Aaron, you could speak to what was said back there and what's being said now. You don't have to get into the weeds of making any accusations towards anyone, obviously. You can just stay wherever you need for that. But it seems now that that's not just a National Party thing. It seems to be a political thing that people will try and score points before something like the redevelopment and say why they don't want it. I strenuously opposed it. To now be happy to be down there cutting ribbons, riding on seesaws and having a good old time, apparently taking all the credit for it. Either of you boys can jump in.
Yeah, I don't know if it is something you can directly compare to the way that our parliament works, where you have parties in opposition and parties in government, because that doesn't exist. And we've had this conversation before. That doesn't exist in local government. You've got 15 people sitting around a table. One of them chairs the meeting, and they collectively make decisions and chart the course for the city. And I think the job of being a councillor and the job of being a mayor are fundamentally different jobs. I mean, there is no job description for a mayor, but the expectation is that one of your primary jobs is to be a cheerleader and a champion for your city, whether that's fighting the city's corner against things like cuts to hospital budgets or infrastructure budgets, or whether it's celebrating the successes of your city and the successes of your community. That's the basic fundamental part of the job. And I think someone who has opposed previous decisions of council but finds themselves in the position of mayor should be celebrating the work that's been done, regardless of their previous voting record. I wish that is what was being happening now, but it isn't, because that is what is good for business in George Street. And this isn't, this is an international phenomenon, right? The backlash against reallocating road space for pedestrians. There's universal pushback against this. And so we shouldn't consider ourselves special here, but, rather than turning up to open the main street after spending all that time and after all of the disruption that has been caused by this particular infrastructure project, and essentially talking it down by saying, well, let's see, I still don't think this is a good idea. I'm going to try and save this. It's like, how is that supportive of your local business community? You know, I would rather everyone who opposed this now be celebrating this and taking credit for it, because I think that is what is in the best interest of the city, as opposed to what may be, you know, that may require some humility to be able to massage the messaging, but that would be the ideal outcome.
Just before we jump in, Chewy, you've been very gracious as well, and I think it's fair to share this, Aaron. Hamish McNally, who is a local reporter down here for Stuff, 22 awkward seconds of Dunedin councillors trying out a new seesaw at $600,000 park in the middle of the city's redevelopment. People arguing about that, not arguing, talking that over. Wise Mayor flippity flop taking the credit, etc. And you came at the end of this thread and said, to be honest, I'd rather the current lot did take credit and celebrate it. That would be what's best for business, rather than insisting on taking it down still. I think you've been very, very, very gracious. I did also like this tweet of yours, Aaron. That was just a story from stuff.co.nz, and your line, it was a bit gangster actually, just saying, you're welcome. And I actually think you haven't been given enough credit for this yet, Aaron. And if they're not going to do it from up there, we should do it for now. You had a big hand to play in this, and it's fucking awesome for the city. Chewy.
I think if we can widen the comments away from Mayor Radich, because I think you're exactly right. You campaign as a councillor, you end up as mayor, you've got to be the one cutting the ribbon. And I'm sure he realises how awkward that is. But there were other councillors that campaigned on this, being so anti it. And then when the first block opened, it's pretty good, isn't it? And I think it's that whole thing of just really stoking some negative feelings to get votes and then ignoring it once you're in. I think is something that's quite obvious. You took a lot of flack for cheering on this project and trying to sell the benefits. I've seen a lot of comments of the comparison between how visible you were as a spokesperson for the city, a spokesperson for the council, and a cheerleader for these quite progressive big projects that the council had planned, compared to what we have now, which is, he'll turn up for the opening and that's pretty much all we see of it.
And get the photograph.
I mean, for someone that has seen similar, I love that he mentioned Cuba Street, a street that I lived right next to, has this absolute hellhole of pedestrianisation. I think anybody that's experienced that and has seen part of a city transform would have known that this would have been the result. How hard has it been, I guess, for you to deal with that? I mean, you've taken all the flack and then obviously stood back and just given yourself some space, it seems. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just curious from your point of view about how this has played out.
Yeah, it wasn't fun, but look, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, we knew it was going to look great. We knew it was going to work. You know, it's ironic that you've got Dr. Cornell West on this program, and you've already mentioned people being on the wrong side of history by supporting what have been universally successful urban design interventions tried and tested the world over, but we're different, aren't we? And that again is this happens everywhere. And the first project that you undertake like this is always going to be the most difficult one, because you don't have anywhere in your city to point to and go, we're going to do it like this. And so, and the similar thing in Auckland when they were doing the work on Te Komititanga and down the bottom of Queen Street, they had nothing to point to that where they could say, this is what it's going to be like here. But now that they've done that, the sell is an easier thing to do when you're trying to do it in other places. Look, I knew we knew it was going to look good, and we knew, but it's exceeded my expectations. The thing that has surprised me the most is you can't really prepare for how it makes you feel differently about engaging with the space in a quite tangible way. and it's just a far more relaxed environment and a far more pleasant environment. And for God's sake, I got into an argument with a checkout operator the other day about wasting taxpayers' money on a playground in the main street. It's like, where is the sense of joy in people's lives that they can't see value in young people feeling safe and welcome and included in their city centre? I mean, that seems like a pretty small investment in a demographic that don't get a lot of love, to be honest.
I've had so many. I work in that block, so I've had so many people's opinions and all of that sort of stuff. And I'm the sort of person that, looks at the updates, looks at the plans. I know that the initial talks about having to update the pipes underneath the city, that started in the early 2000s when I was a student. So, I mean, it's not been sprung on people. But one of the things that I noticed was when everything was being ripped up, right? The farmers' block hadn't been opened up. Nobody really had the vision of what it was going to be. And the moment those fences came down, people changed. They'd seen one completed block and they're like, oh, I get it. And I remember some guy going on about the lack of parking, and I pulled up the website and started counting the parks, and I was like, looks like it's pretty much about the same. And then I had one guy that was going on about there's a few more. One guy was kicking off about the playground, how it was a waste of money, and he had 2 young kids with him. And I just turned to his kids and I was like, I bet you're looking forward to that new playground. And they're like, oh yeah. Amazing. Loved it.
Can I also just bring us also around? You've been very gracious and very kind, Aaron, but I do just still want to at least touch on this idea of political candidates, political parties changing in and out after their next election, because I think it's still important to get through, and what voters, whether that be local body or national, need to do and need to remember. And I guess I could relate this back again to the local body, that everyone was again 3 waters. Yet what we didn't hear were the mayors saying that they'd say we want local control, but then they didn't say it might cost us a bit more to fix up our own things. They'd left that part of the equation off. And now we're being told it's going to cost a bit more. Everyone's up in arms. And no one seems to remember that some of the conversations beforehand were like, the street's going to be terrible. Or we're like, yeah, we can keep our control, but then all the money for any fixing we need to do needs to come from our pot rather than a centralized pot. And even if we're fine here in Dunedin, or if you're fine in Hawke's Bay or whatever, the guys in Gore, they're screwed, 100% screwed. No 2 ways about it. And I'd still be keen, and like, as we well know, we can point to National over and over and over again about what they held Labour to and now refuse to. I guess what I'm wondering is what do we do as voters, as people speaking to voters, to kind of remind people about the double standard, or do we just accept that's a part of politics and get over it? It's never going to change.
I think there's a couple of different things there. I mean, one thing is about how disingenuous an argument can be, particularly during campaign season. And I think that is something that people should be mindful of. And certainly the 3 Waters debate was not a good home for good faith actors. That's not how that played out. And I think that's something to be wary of. And likewise, and I don't want to relitigate the past, but certainly the ways that particular phrases and sentences in the voluminous reports that were produced to support the George Street work have been taken out of context and represented for campaigning purposes, I think would fit into that same category. And people should be cautious around that and challenge people and pull people up on that. But I think we've got to be careful not to further entrench a position or a situation where politicians become paralyzed into never changing their mind.
Yeah.
And when they're, regardless of being confronted or presented with new information or better information or new ideas,
you're being generous. You are being generous again, because we don't, that's not borne out by what we see. We see them changing their minds and ignoring that they've changed their minds. I mean, yes, we'd love it to say, oh, look, new information, so we're going in a new direction. We don't see that. Like, for example, the tax cuts at the moment. The new information is you don't have enough money for it. We see we had enough money, so we're going to just push them through. So I actually agree with you, Aaron, but I think you're being really generous to politicians right now, because if they said, you know what, guys, You know, that cyclone that happened in the North Island, you know, COVID, the things have changed because of conditions. We just get them looking straight ahead and go, no, things haven't changed. We're going to keep doing what we said we were going to do.
Yeah, and which is bonkers in that particular situation. They're going to borrow money to subsidise landlords to the tune of $2.9 billion. I mean, I don't think I don't think, and I don't know whether it's a kind of a morphing of petty bourgeois anti-intellectualism or what, but I don't think that. I mean, increasingly we're seeing just a general disregard for evidence and information and the policy setting agenda, and I think so that's probably a bigger problem than are people are they capable of changing their minds is a different question to are they capable of taking on board new information that may run counter to their ideological platform. Ideology, obviously, a thing only left-wing people have. It's called common sense. In the right-wing mind, probably the most dangerous of all the ideologies. But the anything that doesn't fit with the narrative or fit with the campaign messaging seems to be casually disregarded. I mean, the overarching theme of our new government is vengeance, it seems, as opposed to any particular philosophical objective.
Chewy, what do you think? We should let Aaron go shortly. He needs to go have a nap back in front of his fireplace, I hear. Rumour tells me. What do you want to wrap up with, Chewy? You can finish us off if you want.
I don't think I have anything specific. However, I do want to throw it back over to you, Aaron, just if you want to speak on the project that you're involved with at the moment.
Okay.
Because I checked, I saw your post about it the other day. Checked out the website. It seems really interesting. I think some of our people in the chat might be interested in it.
Yeah, thanks, Chewy. I'm now the co-founder of a business called Florowit, with a couple of lads, ex-Dunedin lads, who are now based in Wellington. And our first project is called Escarpment Domes, which is a pilot project, really. And the short version is we're building visitor accommodation on a stunning piece of rural land looking out over Kapiti Island, and using the money from accommodation to fund native reforestation and predator control and trapping and it's essentially a land restoration and biodiversity recovery project. A pilot for eventually the plan is to work on 200 to 300 hectare lots of land, and then invest that land back into public stewardship. So the first step to making that happen is making the pilot work. And there's me in a late 19th century colonial Wellington bathtub that we purchased specifically for the purpose, and that's where that bath will live. But yeah, we're running we're building 4 geodesic domes, 3 of which people can sleep in. We're running a crowdfunding campaign on PledgeBee where people can buy accommodation. www.escarpmentdomes.nz if you want to find out more information and see more cringe-worthy video content of me inside. That's a massive 8-meter geodesic dome that will have a mezzanine bedroom, roughly where that child is very safely perched on top of the mobile scaffolding, and that will look out over Kapiti Island. It's a fun project, and hopefully we'll get the chance to kick on and do a few more bigger things.
I feel a business trip coming on. What before you go? Do you have any reaction, and you're going to echo here when I put it on, do you have any reaction to the local We Love Our Mayors in the Christchurch Post, or the Post, or the whatever they call it now, and how they came out? What would you expect? That all the big cities are down the bottom, Auckland, Wellington, Dunedin's right down the bottom here as well. Chewy did note, though, that the Dunedin Mayor is down below Nobby Clark, which is an interesting place to be below. Of course, we'll all remember that Nobby Clark was the man who likes to drop N-words every now and again. You got any thoughts about there, or any reaction to the mayoralty ratings that are in there at all there, Aaron?
I mean, I can say this because I'm from there. I think that probably says more about the people who live in Invercargill than it does about their respective mayors. But
That's
I think
what I said.
these,
That's exactly what I said to Chewy as well.
look, I think these sorts of surveys are, as much as anything else, a survey of how homogenous your community might be. And I always get really bothered when people talk about how councils should be united, and David Farrar was putting a lot of that commentary. If you've got a united council behind you, then you'll be more popular. And basically what that means is you've got a whole bunch of people who think the same, probably because they have very similar backgrounds, whereas in the metro areas and cities, we have a broader range of people living here, and therefore a more diverse spectrum of political thought around the council table. And there will never be, I wouldn't imagine, overwhelming, no question, Brother Monk, but it's called nominative determinism. But I think that you'll always struggle in the larger urban centres to have overwhelmingly popular mayors, because there will always be a chunk of the city who fundamentally disagree with their political objectives.
Cool, man. Hey, thanks for
This is
jumping
the
in
most
today.
gracious 34 minutes I've ever spent.
Yeah, nice, bro. Well, we're happy you decided to jump in and add it's always nice having people add perspectives that we can't, because we don't have the experience and we haven't been there. And when it comes to local body politics, you have. So we really appreciate you jumping in and having a chat with us.
All good.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks so much,
All the
Aaron.
best.